This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman and 11 Alive anchor reporter Maria Martin. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And the Atlanta Football Party, of course, is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So how does Jimmy stop Jayden? We'll discuss. And does the old ball coach or his protege have more on the line? Sunday, we'll talk about it. We'll also talk about some things we do after a dub, after Christmas, and in the district, maybe. But first, let's talk about round 249. Michael Penix Jr. is preparing for the second regular start of his young NFL career. So for you, Maria, what does Zach Robinson have to do to ensure Penix is put in a position to succeed, and of course, that the offense can have success overall?
Yeah, I thought that their win this past Sunday was great for him in his debut. You know, we talked a lot about opponent, which was really important for him to make his debut against the Giants. I think only builds his confidence. It was a pretty safe game plan for him. You know, you didn't get to see the full scope of what I think he's capable of, but you did see some very encouraging signs as to why the Falcons were so adamant about picking him in the first round. A couple of those throws, you were thinking, man, Kirk can't make those right now. So I thought that was really encouraging. I think continuing with that somewhat safe game plan, but you're going to have to take risks against the Commanders. This is a team very, very different than the New York Giants. I think in order to win, he's going to have to put him in those positions that you drafted him to do in the first place. Let him take those shots downfield. Let him weave that ball in between those tight spots that he did a little bit on Sunday against the Giants. But, you know, this is an opportunity for him to show off a little bit. And even, you know, in college, I think it was Raw that was mentioning it after the win over the Giants. You didn't see him scramble a ton, but he did get to show that off a little bit. He can do it, you know, not to the degree of other quarterbacks, but I think his mobility also separates him from Kirk. So just let him do his thing would be my biggest suggestion to Zach Robinson. You know, let him get comfy, those intermediate throws, those easy screens. You're going to have Bijan Robinson obviously involved a ton on Sunday. You're going to have to in order to win. But I think just letting him be himself is the best game plan possible because he can do it. He can get the win for you.
Yeah, definitely he can. And when I look at it, it's amazing, Aaron, because when we started the season, if you will, of course, we had the top 4 QBs. So we're looking at Caleb Williams, we're looking at Jayden Daniels, we're looking at JJ McCarthy, we're looking at Michael Penix Jr. And of course, we know JJ McCarthy completely out of the conversation at the beginning of the season, out for his first season due to injury. Michael Penix Jr. kind of just supposed to be learning under the tutelage of Kirk Cousins. And then we've seen the other two kind of blaze, if you will. But for Michael Penix Jr., now he's gotten his opportunity to kind of shine. Like Maria said, did a solid job the first week. Now we're looking at his second start in a very critical matchup against the team in the Commanders who's fighting for their playoff lives, just like the Falcons. So what do you think Zach Robinson needs to do to ensure that Penix is put in a position to succeed again this week and that he can have that offense succeeding and kind of humming overall?
Yeah, I think Maria nailed it in terms of just kind of keep doing what you're doing. Obviously, it worked very effectively. Obviously, it's a different animal when you're dealing with the New York Giants, who I think were 32nd in scoring heading into last week, and you're dealing now with the Washington Commanders, who are, I think, 4th in scoring this week. So you're probably going to need to put up a little bit more points on offense, and I don't know if you can count on 2 pick sixes from the defense to bolster your scoring output this week, but we'll see. More on that, I guess, later when we talk about what Jimmy Lake can do. But I think with this particular offense, and when this offense, I think, is at its best, it's that sort of pick your poison type of offense where they can spread the ball around. I know Kyle Pitts is very polarizing right now, but I do think this offense is better when Kyle Pitts is performing at a high level. Of course, the question is, can we get Kyle Pitts to perform at a high level is really the issue going on in Atlanta at this point. But, you know, with Drake London and Darnell Mooney and Ray McLeod and Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, when you have all 5 of those guys, all 6 of those guys really sort of going, this offense, I feel like, can be really, really formidable and can look like an offense that can go, blow for blow with a top 4 scoring offense like Washington has. And so I think if they can do the things that Penix did well last week, and then just get a little bit more out of some of the other sort of peripheral playmakers, including Kyle Pitts. I think that's going to be sort of the thing that can really allow them to be able to, if they need to win a shootout against this Washington Commanders team, they can do that.
T, can I say something real quick?
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the locker room afterwards, you bring up a really good point, Aaron. Bijan made a really good and interesting point. You know that you remember when he almost got into the end zone on that one throw and it would have been Michael Penix's first passing touchdown in the NFL? He said, man, he was so frustrated that he didn't realize that the defender was right behind him and was able to skirt him on the ankles. So he said, I was so frustrated and I ran right back over to the huddle and I said, listen, Mike, I'm going to get you a ton of those next Sunday. He was already alluding to the fact that they're going to need to find the end zone a little bit more against the Commanders in order to win. So I thought that was a great point.
Oh, definitely, because we know that the Commanders have won 3 straight. And like Aaron said, 42 points that they posted a couple of weeks ago. Then, we'll talk about that Saints game in a minute, but then another 36 that they dropped on Eagles. We know that was an interesting game as well, but ultimately they have the ability to score in buckets. So yeah, you definitely want to have that mindset that, hey, we're going to need to score. And like you said, Aaron, not just on defense, because you can't kind of count on that. Although you will need to win the turnover battle, Maria. We know we hear that from Raheem Morris all the time. But ultimately speaking, you've got to be able to deliver when this defense gives it to you. And listen, the Commanders' defense is not exactly world beaters when it comes to their rush defense, right? So there are opportunities that you can take advantage of that. And then, of course, we know what that'll do. That'll set up the wonderful play action game. And then, like you said, Aaron, hopefully your receivers and your tight end as well. Hopefully they do what they're supposed to do when you zip them the ball. Hopefully they're in position to catch the ball. And Maria, I'm trying my best not to do shade, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult because you see where there's so much opportunity there. And that's another place where the Commanders don't exactly shine, and that's in their ability to defend against tight ends. So this would be a great opportunity for Kyle Pitts to take advantage of that, and maybe even a little bit of Charlie Werner. Maybe we'll see a little bit more of him. I don't think that would be a half bad idea for more than just blocking. Now, Penix, of course, we know will be facing off with the odds-on favorite for the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year in Jayden Daniels, also number 2 in the NFL draft. We know Penix was number 8. We talked about that a minute ago. But the thing is, Maria, he was actually thought by a lot of people to truly be the best quarterback in this year's draft. Penix, of course. So I'm going to say it this way, and I'm going to let you roll with it how you want to. Okay. What do you need to see from Penix to prove to you he is the best QB in the 2024 draft, if he needs to prove anything? Or is there something else you want Penix to, quote unquote, prove to you come Sunday?
No, I mean, because whenever the draft happened, I was the one that stood on the table, or one of the people that stood on the table and said that Penix was the best quarterback in this draft class in terms of pure passing ability. And that's not to diminish at all what Jayden Daniels does or did or is doing. I voted for him for the Heisman. He was very deserving of that when he was in college. I think he's fully deserving of Rookie of the Year. Of course, there's some more guys that have given him a little bit more competition, but Jayden lights out. The Commanders even being in this position to win potentially 11 games was not on anyone's bingo card. And that's largely because of Jayden Daniels orchestrating their offense and doing it very well each and every week. However, for Michael, I don't think that you're going to get the proof that everyone is looking for this year. Again, doesn't mean I don't think they're going to make it to the playoffs. I think just them getting to the playoffs with a rookie quarterback with 3 games to play when he was put in at week 16, that to me proves that you're the best quarterback in this draft class. That is wild. That's such an impossible situation to put a rookie in. There's some other things that play into their favor. You were mentioning you can't rely on the defense to give you some points this Sunday. That was a conversation amongst this defense heading into the Giants game. Hey, we got to help this kid out. It's his first time out there. We all know how rookie debuts can go in the NFL. Even Jayden Daniels, there's only been 2 games, I think, this entire year where he's been under the 200-yard passing mark, and if not over 300 yards. I mean, he's just lighting everybody on fire, one of which was in week 1. It's just how it goes with NFL rookie quarterbacks. It's a tough thing to do. So I don't know that we're going to get the full scope of what Mike can do throughout the rest of the year. You're facing a very tough Commanders team. Things might look a little dicey for him on Sunday. You're really going to start to learn how he can be the future of this franchise. I think in this game, you'll start to get an idea of, hey, when things are contentious, when your back is against the wall, how do you respond? I don't know that you can measure that against Jayden's full body of work this year. And then again, you finish with the Panthers, who look a little bit more realistic.
They have a pulse.
That's as nice as I can say that through the last couple games that we've seen them play. So, that's not really a giveaway game either. It's going to be tough. You'll see some divisive things for him as well. Again, I still think he's the best quarterback in that draft class. You're just going to have to give him a little bit more time to prove that to you.
Yeah. And Aaron, I'll give you that kind of loose definition of prove as well, because I think Maria makes a great point. And that's, we were talking kind of pre-show, like prove, definition of prove for Michael Penix Jr., who's only going into his second regular season start of his NFL career in his rookie season, when nobody expected him to be inserted into a game other than maybe if it was some trash minutes later on. Now it's kind of like the fate of the franchise for this season is kind of resting, quote unquote, on his shoulders.
Yeah, I think Maria nailed it, where you're if you want to have that conversation about, who's QB1 from this draft class. And I think all these rookies so far have shown enough that you feel like it's an uncharacteristically good quarterback class. Because usually when we have like 5 or 6 guys drafted in the first round, it's like 1 or 2 of those guys turns out to be good and the other 3 like stink or something like that.
And there's no middle ground. Typically.
Yeah. And we don't know what JJ McCarthy is going to be, but you're going to feel pretty good. Like, hey, Sam Darnold looks pretty good in this offense. What is JJ McCarthy going to look like? And you've seen some of the other things with all these other rookie quarterbacks. So I think this like QB1 debate is going to not really get settled at any point in the future. It's like, okay, Jayden Daniels sort of got the lead start this year, and then sort of who can make up ground next year and all that sort of things. But I think with what Maria's talking about, like where we're in a position where the Falcons season, Penix has a potential to quote unquote save the season and get a win this week and potentially really solidify this team's playoff chances. And as you both said, that's an impossible task for a rookie quarterback to achieve. And if Penix can do that with, in this sort of short period of time, that to me is the argument for him to basically come in and to basically, just resurrect the corpse of the Falcons 2024 season as it was going, these last couple of weeks. And sort of, speaking of Christmas, it's like it's a Christmas miracle, this sort of thing. So I think that's kind of where, if he can make the case, like that's going to be the case, and getting this win on Sunday against Jayden Daniels, I think will be, really a strong piece of evidence for him to make that case.
Yeah, you feel like the Falcons were kind of left for dead, and it's like, ooh, reports of the death of the Atlanta Falcons, their season, their coach. You know how it kind of went off the cliff. It went from, oh my God, they are world beaters, they're gonna, run the South, etc., to, oh my God, they're awful, they're the worst, we need to fire everybody. And it's like, well, no, probably somewhere in the middle, if you will. And I think too, when we look at that class, and I will add, because I know Maria will get us if we don't. And it's funny because I'm like, Jarvis, where are you? Because he would, you two debate on Bo Nix and it's hilarious. But but I don't want to forget Bo Nix, because he's done a solid job for the Broncos as well. And they wouldn't be having this conversation about them being in a playoff hunt if not.
You know what's funny? You were talking about all the quarterbacks in this draft class. I was like, somebody say Bo Nix. Somebody say Bo Nix. Somebody say Bo Nix. So I'm glad that you brought that up. You know me so well. I'm like, Bo is left out of the conversation. Put him in there.
Put him in the mix. Yeah, because he has earned his way into the mix. And don't get me wrong, the reason I wanted to kind of wrap on this one is because, too, when we look at the other teams, like I remember when Dan Quinn got hired for the Washington Commanders job, and we all kind of knew they were going to pick Jayden Daniels. I was like, yeah, that isn't exactly a rebuild, because that defense was already there. You already had Terry McLaurin and a decent O-line. So it was like, that's not a bad place for Jayden Daniels to land, right? Mm-hmm. I think the Chicago Bears surprised us, and then they didn't surprise us, right? Because they were kind of doing things above where we thought they were going to be, and then they kind of came back to earth, if you will. But still, Caleb Williams gets himself a solid defense. And then you just kind of, look down the road. Bo Nix, I mean, the Broncos, we saw what the Broncos can do. On the defensive side of the ball and even offensively. So I feel like every other quarterback was kind of going into this like lights out situation, whereas we weren't really sure what the situation was going to be for Michael Penix Jr. Should he absolutely have to come in this year? But again, nobody expected him to come in, and nobody knew what the rest of this team was going to look like. So I think I would like to give him a little bit of grace as well in terms of what I want him to prove. The only thing I really want him to prove is just to show people, and I think he will, that last week was not a fluke, that this is going to be the quarterback that you see now and going forward for this team. I think that what we saw last week, we're going to see again this week. And that's really all I want him to prove: consistency.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. And again, like, it was a very safe game plan for him. And all that we asked him to do, not turn the ball over, which there's an interception on the stat sheet, but we all know what happened in that scenario. He should not be credited for that.
True.
I will be very friendly because it is Christmas week and Hanukkah week and Kwanzaa and all of those things. So, have him play clean. He did that. Have him play to where he doesn't lose the game. He did that in your rookie debut. That's all you can ask for. And I think he'll only go up from there.
Exactly. So how does Jimmy stop that other guy? How does he stop Jayden? We'll discuss when we take it under further review. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. Now, some people love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. Maria talked about the fact that Bijan Robinson is looking to get Michael Penix Jr. his first passing touchdown of his NFL career. Aaron mentioned points, and we talked about the points that the Commanders can light up. We hope the Falcons can do the same, but it'll be thrilling nonetheless, and you can make that game more thrilling with FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel. FanDuel is an official sports book partner of the NFL, and FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. So, Aaron, Jimmy Lake has been, and I think that what we've seen out of Jimmy Lake, it's been really good, especially on the backside of that bye week. I think if we look at all three phases of the game, and granted, you guys, if you want to throw in special teams, because I think we've seen them kind of trend back to what we were accustomed to with Marquise Williams' squad, definitely throw that in. But we've seen some lights out play, most definitely from the defense. And of course, as we discussed before, presumptive offensive rookie of the year, Daniels, he's going to be a handful. But let's be real, he's a handful who also looks like a veteran. I mean, sometimes I kind of forget myself that he's a rookie. But that said, what does Jimmy Lake have to do in order to put this defense in position to at least make sure that Daniels doesn't just beat the Falcons all by himself? I think you're on mute, Free.
Yes. I don't know if there's anything Jimmy Lake can really scheme up with Jayden Daniels to stop him. I think it's really just, it boils down to discipline and execution,
Yes.
where with that front being able to not only sort of corral him when he, and pressure him when he's dropping back to throw. But the thing that makes Jayden Daniels so dangerous and why he's the presumptive favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year is you can cover it perfectly on the back end and have all those wide receivers locked down. You'll lock down Zach Ertz and Terry McLaurin and all those guys, Olamide Zaccheaus. And then Jayden Daniels was like, okay, I'll just take off and run for 20 yards. And it's like, okay, well, we can't really defend that. And I don't know if there's a player on the Falcons defense that you would be like, okay, your job is to stop Jayden Daniels from doing that, right? If Troy Anderson was healthy, like maybe that would be his assignment in this type of game, but Troy Anderson's not healthy. He's on the IR. And so it's really, I think, on that front to be disciplined in their rush lanes. And I know this is something that is music to the ears of Jarvis, and it's something that he has harped on many, many times about, Arnold Ebiketie on that speed rush, getting too far upfield and letting Jayden Daniels be able to escape outside the side of the pocket and all those various things. So it's really, to me, I don't know if there's a Jimmy Lake thing that he can do. Like, he can just kind of do what he's been doing over these last couple of weeks, where this defense has been playing much better. The front has been playing much better. Obviously, the pass rush has been very productive. And so if they can keep doing what they're doing, I think they'll be in a position to stop Jayden Daniels. But because Jayden Daniels is Jayden Daniels, like we saw it at LSU, we've seen it in the NFL, where it's just like you scheme it up perfectly and you lock everybody down, and you get that guy that wins up front, that gets pressure, and he just kind of sidesteps him and then just scampers for 20 yards. And it's just like, there's nothing we as a coaching staff can do to kind of stop this.
Yeah, and it reminds me of that old adage of you can't stop him, you can only hope to contain him. And I'm like, or hope that he doesn't break contain. But but I was thinking about Arnold WKT as well, because as we talked about earlier in the week, there are only 2 players in the league that have had 4 sacks in the last 4 weeks, AK and TJ Watt. So he's in good company. And then when you talk about his pass rush rate is like second in the NFL across that same period of time. So we see him kind of picking up. But Maria, the reason I mentioned that is because I thought about AK yesterday when I was watching, and this pains me because you guys know I'm a Steelers fan, but I was watching Ravens Texans yesterday. And I watched Lamar Jackson literally spin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times before he got the ball to his receiver to eventually get the touchdown. Not saying that Jayden Daniels is on that Lamar Jackson level, but there are similarities in terms of how he's able to extend a play. And the biggest challenge, like Aaron said, may not be so much in what Jimmy Lake's going to do, but in his defense executing the plan.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about that so much this year, and that execution has been lacking for this Falcons defense for a large majority of the year. Now, they have turned that around the last couple of weeks, and so that's encouraging. But when you're facing a quarterback who can turn water into wine, I literally feel the exact same way as Aaron. It's one of those things where you can plan as much as you want, but at the end of the day, he gonna do some stuff that's gonna hurt you. And you just have to really be able to understand that that is really what you're facing on Sunday. He's a guy that's won Rookie of the Week, 10 times this year? I mean, there's been 7 times on their schedule where he's leading in both rushing yards and passing yards at the end of the game. He can do so many different things that hurts a defense. And it's just going to come down to discipline and making sure you know your assignments. There's been also a couple of times this year, the Falcons defense literally physically looked confused as to what was happening. You saw some of the guys turning their heads around, like, what is going on, which I don't understand why we've seen that before this year. But I think if you're disciplined, you know the game plan, you do the best you can to make sure that he doesn't turn those few little spin yards into 20 yards like Aaron is talking about, and scampering and getting away. You know, you have to be able to make sure that you're not forcing him into situations like that. Everybody is going to have to be on their P's and Q's. And you can't really, as you guys had mentioned off the beginning of the show, you can't rely on the defense to turn the ball over in this one. They've played 8 clean games this year, and they don't turn the ball over a ton. Whereas the Falcons, they tend to do that offensively. Granted, a different quarterback is in there now at this point, but you never know. It is possible for them to turn the ball over, but for Washington, you can't count on that. So you have to count on the fact that he can, again, turn water into wine and do some things that there's just not much you can do about it. At the end of the day, he's just that good.
Exactly. And it may be a little bit of, give the offense something and then they give you something back. So if you are able to at least, I don't know if you're going to get many 3 and outs on him, but maybe if you have the opportunity to at least make sure that you stop some drives, or maybe hold the Commanders to field goals, that might help. But in particular, stopping the drives, if you're able to help in some way to flip the field, and that goes back to what we were talking about on how the defense can help Michael Penix Jr. and what are some of the things that can help him out. Give him a short field to play with.
Yeah.
Or, give him that opportunity to be on the field. And then once he gets the short field, then we go back to what Zach Robinson can do, which is try to grind it out. Because I think one of the ways that you keep Jayden Daniels in check is to keep him off the field. Yeah. And, that might be your best defense, if you will. But there have been leaks that have been shown in this Commanders offense because, hey, we look at the fact that they only scored 20 points against the Saints a couple of weeks ago. And we've seen what a debacle the Saints can be on most days. What were they, the first team to be shut out this entire season? So yeah, you're a team that can be first team to be shut out this entire season, but yet you were able to keep the Commanders to 20 points. And then you look at what the Falcons defense has been able to do, holding 3 of their last 4 opponents under 17. So Aaron, when you consider what we just talked about, what the Saints were able to do to Washington, what makes you confident that maybe the Falcons can do the same or to better themselves or put themselves at least in position to win the game by limiting the amount of points that the opponent can score?
Well, I think the thing that stood out in that Saints game was they sacked Jayden Daniels 8 times in that game. And so the front was able to do their job. They were able to limit his ability to make some of those explosive plays with his legs and whatnot, and bring him down. So I think that's a key. I think the other thing that the Saints were able to do well in that game was they were able to shut down Brian Robinson in that run game pretty effectively as well. And so if you can, get Jayden Daniels behind the chains, and then your pass rush can get home in those 3rd and long situations, I think that's the formula for success for this Falcons team. So it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where you just need your defense to kind of execute in those situations. And if they can do that, that's going to, multiply your chances of being able to slow down this offense enough for the Falcons offense to be able to, do the thing that they're supposed to do and outscore them,
Exactly. And, it's interesting too, because I'll tell you this, Maria, and it's a little bit of a flip, but you will have to do something with what, the time that you have. If the Commanders happen to be on the field for as long as they were against the Saints, which it was something like 40-20.
Yeah, 40 minutes.
The time of possession. Yeah, you just have to make sure that if they're on the field, they're absolutely not getting anything out of those possessions.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you look at that game and that was more of a fluke for the Commanders than anything else. I mean, Jayden kind of lost his touch on the long ball in that game, which is something he's so good at. And it was something that he was able to return to against Philadelphia. So that was kind of a one-time scenario for him. But the thing about the Commanders too is that they are, even though that game was so close and we really thought that it was possible the Saints could win the game, the Commanders are still so efficient on first down. It's those first looks that Jayden gets, whether it's a passing first down or a rushing first down. That's where the Falcons really need to make sure that they don't do a lot of damage. And I think you're right, T, making sure that Jayden doesn't have as much time as 40 minutes on the field. You try to get him off the field as much as possible. And if you're Zach Robinson, perhaps the best game plan for Michael Penix Jr., going back to our original segment in the beginning, is to set him up to get those really big, chunky drives and go the length of the field, maybe just take some time off of the clock and get out there as much as possible without turning the ball over. That perhaps may be the best game plan. It's how often can you get him off of the field, Jayden Daniels, and make sure that Michael Penix is set up for success. So the Commanders, you said it. There's been some glaring deficiencies for them, but they're not consistent. It's not like this is a consistent issue for this team. They're consistently good. There have been some games where there's an off game here or there. It's similar to what we talked about with the Falcons and the Broncos game. That was a throwaway game. You just kind of forget it. Everything was going wrong. Even in that almost loss to the Saints, that wasn't the case for the Commanders. Not everything was going wrong like it was for the Falcons in their worst loss of the year. So yeah, I think that for this team, they just need to make sure that Jayden doesn't spend 40 minutes on the field like he did against New Orleans. That's a lot.
Yeah, and if they can get some help from special teams, that wouldn't be a bad idea as well. Bradley Pinion, of course, second in the entirety of the league, averaging 47 yards per punt. So I think that'll be good in terms of being able to give them a long field to use. Now, does the old ball coach or his protege have more on the line Sunday? We'll talk about it in Next Up. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely always happens to me. No matter what I do, I put it on my calendar on my phone to remind me to cancel the subscription. It doesn't happen. I can tell you, I've had a few of them where I didn't even realize I was still paying for them as well. And that's where Rocket Money comes in because they make it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. So Rocket Money is that personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor spending, and helping you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. So Maria, when we look at, again, some of those storylines, those underlying storylines, one of the biggest ones is probably the Raheem Morris, Dan Quinn storyline. We, of course, know Ra worked under DQ for the 5 seasons that DQ was head coach for the Falcons. Of course, Ra also was the interim head coach when DQ was let go. So I think it's so interesting and maybe even ironic that Quinn could be standing in the way of Coach Ra getting into the playoffs. And I think that's interesting. But this thing for the Commanders as well, whether it's getting into the playoffs, seeding, etc., like Ra might have an opportunity to kind of show his old boss exactly who he can be. So I don't know. I think it's kind of ironic that these guys at this point in the season, Dan Quinn, of course, returning to head coaching, as well as Raheem Morris returning to head coaching for two teams that are battling in the playoffs.
You know, for everyone that believes that the NFL is written at the beginning of the year and there's some script that they're following that plays out, I don't know that you could write something up that's better than this. This is so great. And, you know, when I started to realize that the Commanders were the polar opposite of what a lot of people thought they were going to be this year. Again, we're talking about them potentially having 11 wins for the first time since the 90s. They have a rookie quarterback leading them to their first postseason appearance. It's probably inevitable at this point since 2020. You know, that is crazy. Nobody thought that DQ could do that. No one thought Jayden Daniels could do that in this year. And then on the flip side, Ra and DQ know each other so well. They're good friends. You know, Ra worked for DQ for a very long time. And then, of course, as you mentioned, took over as the interim when DQ got let go. So I think it is very ironic and very funny. And thank goodness the Cowboys happened to help the Falcons out just a little bit. So I think, you know, even if, gosh forbid, the Commanders do win on Sunday, you know, the Falcons are still in a pretty good position heading into the final game of the year, which that would just be so Falcon to have everything come down to the final game of the year, which it does regardless. Nothing can happen for the Falcons this Sunday, as we know, but it's just so painstakingly Falcon, as I've learned since I've been here since 2019. These are two teams that are going up against each other where they have the storylines that we just all went over. Both teams are trying to get into the postseason for the first time since 2020 and 17 respectively. I think it is incredible. It's such good drama. It's what you live for. And it's why they got flexed to Sunday Night Football, because that's all we're going to talk about. And especially there's two rookie quarterbacks, mind you, which no one thought that was going to be the case either. So we thought it was going to be Kirk Cousins returning to his old team and seeing all of his friends and riding into the sunset and all these things. No, it's actually going to be a rookie quarterback against a rookie quarterback. Even better narrative. So I love it. I think it's great.
I think so too. And you know, Aaron, in addition to these two quarterbacks, like Maria said, we owe the Dallas Cowboys a thank you because they gave the Falcons life. Oh, I'm sorry, DQ. Is that the team that you were the defensive coordinator for before you moved down to Washington Commanders? Man, so many, like you said, you can't make this stuff up.
Yeah. Shout out to Cooper Rush. You know, some great things this season. So we'll see if he can do some more great things, because I think the Falcons may need, if they don't win on Sunday, they may need Cooper Rush to do some magic against Washington in Week 18. So we'll see how that all plays out. But it's crazy because, like, you know, with Raheem and DQ, they go back like 30 years to when Raheem was a player at Hofstra, I think it was. Dan Quinn was the D-line coach. So like these are two people that have a long history together. And it is interesting, sort of what Maria said, because like I don't think anybody really thought Washington was going to be good this year. Everybody was like, oh, they're going to hire Ben Johnson, and Ben Johnson stayed in Detroit. And then everybody was like, oh, they hired Dan Quinn. That feels like such a drop off in terms of
people are still mad that happened. Remember?
Oh yeah, that did not go over well.
Yeah, and so like it was just like, ugh. And then they hired Cliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator. You're like, okay, like.
That didn't go well.
And then you're sitting here and it just it's all worked, and so you're just like, you know, that sort of Dan Quinn magic that, you know, sort of ran out in Atlanta by the end, but early on in his tenure obviously had a lot of high degree of success, maybe not as much success as we all wanted him to have, but you know, just that close. But you know, it is interesting that it sort of boils down to these two guys, this particular matchup heading into Sunday. So the narratives are, you know, incredible going into this matchup, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Indeed. Interesting is probably an understatement. Now, like you guys said, these coaches go way, way, way back. And I'm sure on some level, Rise motivated to be his old boss. It's sort of like when we talk about a Kirby Smart going against a Nick Saban and having the opportunity to kind of one up your boss is not a bad thing. But I'm sure that Dan Quinn has some motivation as well. I don't know, maybe this whole like the Falcons sent you out the pasture thing could be, so they both kind of have their motivations on some level to kind of win this game. But the one, Maria, that I thought about as well was when you do step out and you move on from your former boss, right? And then you come back in a head-to-head matchup, you want to show your individuality. You don't want to look like, whether it was Kirby Smart didn't want to look like Saban 2.0. I'm sure that Raheem Morris doesn't want to look like Dan Quinn 2.0, which a lot of people just assumed that's what he was going to be. But for you, what's different, even if it's just like the little subtleties about the way Ra approaches a game or about the way that he approaches coaching or his philosophies versus maybe what you saw in Dan Quinn for the 5 years that he was in Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. DQ, one of the things that people really thought he was good at was he was a good players coach, and he was. Yeah. But I think Raw, it's like a different level of connection with the players, and you kind of understood that even just from the beginning of him coming here. Like the first day he stepped in the door again as now the head coach of the Falcons, it was just like instant connection and chemistry with everybody in the building. And there was a different kind of buzz in the building than there was with DQ. Obviously, some of that magic with DQ ran out, as Aaron was talking about. And so the building does feel a little bit different when you do what you did. Let's not mention it. And then past that, I'm being nice. I'm in the Christmas spirit. Obviously, it's going to feel different naturally. But I just think that Raw has a very unique way of coaching players in the NFL. You don't see it a lot. You get some of that out of Dan Campbell, I think, in Detroit. There's a different level of excitement, respect, all of these things. And, a lot of people were very tired of DQ using phrases and buzzwords and all of these things, whereas Rod does it sometimes, but he's not the one that starts it. It's always his players. Like, think about the secondary and the nickname they gave themselves. The offensive line has a nickname for their group. So I think that that's really the approach. He's a little bit more energetic, I would say. He's, I think, a lot more energetic than DQ. He just has this like easy aura about him. And not that DQ didn't. They're just two very different people. So I think their approach is drastically different in that way. Their personalities are nowhere near the same.
Yeah, I think that's a great call. And what about for you, Aaron, when you think about DQ versus Raheem, those subtle differences or bigger differences that say, hey, Ra is nobody's DQ 2.0?
Yeah, I think, it feels like, and, some of this is probably owed to the Falcons and being in Dallas the last couple of years. It does feel like DQ's a little bit more worn at this stage coaching than he probably was, almost a decade ago when he first became the Falcons head coach. And so I think that speaks to what Maria's talking about with Ross seemingly a lot more energetic, a lot more youthful at this stage in his career, given the sort of similar ages, I think, when they started. So I think those are, I don't, comparing Raheem Morris to Dan Quinn is like a bad thing. I don't know if it is in my eyes. Like, I feel like there are a lot of similarities. And again, going back to what we were just talking about, where like it kind of fizzled out for Dan Quinn over time. And I just think like the hope with Raheem Morris, with some of those subtle differences and sort of trying to pick exactly what it is, I don't know, but like I just think you just hope with Raheem Morris is like, okay, if he can have a similar start to what Dan Quinn had and just finish a little bit stronger, in the situation, like that's all you really need. He just needs to be like 10% better than what Dan Quinn was, and hopefully that doesn't fizzle out in the ways it started to fizzle out after 4 or so years in Atlanta when Dan Quinn was the head coach. So like, I don't know if there's like one specific thing that I would say like this is what separates these two individuals. Like I know from Falcon fans, like they get mad at Raheem Morris because he smiles after losses and whatnot, and then it's like, all right, guys, like what's going on here? So I don't think there's like I know that was a big gripe with Dan Quinn when he was here, but that's I don't know if there's a whole lot that's different to them, and I just think we'll see how it all kind of plays out if Raheem can more separate himself from that conversation.
I'll throw one out there, and if you guys want to debate it on the other side, definitely do. But one that I see is Raheem was bold enough to make the change at quarterback. And I think that Dan Quinn, one of the things that kind of derailed him was sometimes he was too stubborn. And I think that that I'm not sure that's a move that Dan Quinn would have made at this point, but it was a move that Raheem makes. Subtle difference, but difference nonetheless. So we'll talk about, again, some fun things like celebrating a W. We'll talk about that on the other side. This episode of Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown. Hopefully, Michael Penix Jr. will get at least his first, if not more, of his NFL touchdowns in this upcoming game against the Commanders. How many points each team will score? It might be one of those where it's a back and forth, and they are literally lighting up the scoreboard in DC. So not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has other bets there for you as well. So visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. You can make every moment more with FanDuel because, of course, FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and it is a proud partner, of course, of the NFL, an official sportsbook partner as well of the NFL. So let's have a little fun with this one, Aaron, because it's something that Michael Penix said earlier in the week, but you never know. We hope that this is the same conversation that we'll be having with him either Sunday night or Monday morning. So, of course, last Sunday, he was asked the question about Costco because when he got the news that he was going to be QB1, he was at Costco. So the question was, hey, are you going to celebrate there? And he's like, hopefully it'll be something fancier, although Costco is great, needs to hit me up. And I was like, that's right. Put it out there. Put it in the atmosphere that you want that. You wanted to have the opportunity to be the endorser for them. But I was thinking, if you guys were rookie QB celebrating your first NFL win, or maybe hopefully your second NFL win this season with the Falcons getting a win over the Commanders, where would you go and celebrate? So where would you go, Aaron?
I would probably go to someplace that's not appropriate to say on this show.
Were you going to say Magic City? Because I would have.
You can fill in the blank. Let your imagination take you wherever you want to go. I just know that if I was an NFL rookie quarterback that won a football game, I would be up till like 4 a.m. the next day and be late to practice and all that stuff. But again, that's why I'm and not a rookie quarterback. That's why I wouldn't be in that position to be that successful. So like, I would just take that as like, this is the greatest accomplishment of my life. And let's see where I am at 4 a.m. the next day. And maybe it's ready to go to practice. Maybe it's not. That's how I would do it. But again, I know that's not the way that Michael Penix would do it, but that's just me. But
Maria, you can't be mad at Free for just wanting some lemon pepper wings. I mean,
look, I was gonna make the Magic City joke. I really didn't expect you to do that, Free. So this is exciting. This tells me a lot about you. You know, you're always like,
I love it. We're learning new things.
Calm and collected. Yeah. You know, you're giving Michael Penix a little bit, like one level, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm gonna go to a strip club. You didn't say this, but you know, this is kind of what I thought was going into your head. I love the Costco celebration. It's so innocent. It's so funny. And so like everybody else, how many times have we all stood in line at Costco to get a freaking $1 hot dog? I mean, none of us are getting the call that we're now going to be the starting quarterback of the Falcons while we're in line for the hot dog. So that's a little bit different. I don't know. I think I would just celebrate at a really nice restaurant. You know, maybe one that I didn't think a lot of people were going to be at, because that would be annoying to me. You know, I'm just like trying to celebrate with, you know, whoever is in my inner circle, and then a bunch of people want to hang out. And, you know, some people can do that. I know that Pat Mahomes, after every win, he's got like 6,000 people at his house. Like, I don't know if I could be doing all that. So I would just want something like chill, low key, a little bit more elevated than Costco, perhaps. But not as crazy as Free. That I may save that for the off season, you know.
See, I'm going to be in the middle, right? Because I'm going to have like, yes, my inner circle and maybe a few extras, maybe not to MC per se, but I probably will be somewhere close to that place that's around the corner from the Benz. And what I would do is just because, hey, I'm the rookie QB who just got my first NFL win. I'm buying up the bar. I'm doing it big. Like, we're all just going to celebrate. And you guys know that I'm originally from New Orleans. So we're going to go find ourselves a New Orleans caterer, and we're about to eat some red beans and rice, some gumbo. Yeah, we're about to have fun. And if I can't actually get, like, because it's probably going to be last minute, and I'm thinking if I'm in Atlanta, because of course I'm not, in New Orleans, so I try to also think about my Atlanta connections as well. If I'm in Atlanta, I am probably trying to find somebody who can find T.I. or Big Boy or Jeezy for me, because these are super fans for the Falcons. So why wouldn't they want to celebrate with me as a winning rookie QB and maybe, give me a few bars or whatever, drop a few lyrics, few lines. It would be good.
And you know what? I think that's a good point, because like winning in the NFL is really hard. I know that people forget that a lot, but you never really know when your next win's going to be. So why not do it up big? And if that's one of the last ones that you got, you had T.I., you had everybody with you, you were at Magic City. So you know what? That could be really fun.
Yeah. You would just, like you said, just rent it out, like maybe the top floor, so that people don't necessarily.
If you rented it out, that'd be fine.
Yeah. And then you could like get those disclaimers that Derek Jeter puts out so that nobody can take pictures and all that other stuff. So yeah, look, Maria, Free, you all see that I have a plan, right? You see I have a plan.
I like your plan.
So I would know exactly what would happen if I was that rookie QB, or dare I say, once, because we're speaking positive things into existence, when I get that job, my dream job, yeah, we're buying out the bar. We're buying out the bar. The other thing I want to ask you guys is this. I do know it's after Christmas, but I also know if you are a shopper, then you know that there are wonderful after Christmas sales that are going on today. So if you had to ask for one gift kind of after Christmas sale style from this Falcons team, Maria, what would it be?
This is a really good question. I mean, I don't want to go the playoff route, because we all know I want them to make the playoffs, and I still think they're going to make the playoffs. I've said this for weeks and weeks and weeks now.
Yeah, we're going to be positive.
I'm just going to go like one player, one situation. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I would like a long Bijan Robinson run this year, because he's very capable. We haven't seen him bust out a 50-plus yard run this year. We saw the 71-yard touchdown, him and Desmond Ridder, I think it was last year. Incredibly capable of this situation. And every single game, I'm just waiting on pins and needles for Bijan to break out and just go as far as he can. I don't know that that's going to happen in Washington. So perhaps I will get my after Christmas sale wish on the final game of the year.
Perhaps. Let's hope. How about you, Bree? After Christmas gift.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious is, get a win so that the vibes in Atlanta can still be great, and
yeah, the vibes were a little dicey there for a minute.
Yeah, the vibes were very off. I think, if we're just, asking for a Christmas miracle,
it's whatever you want.
It's Christmas.
Yeah. Let's get a Kyle Pitts game-winning touchdown just to have something crazy happen.
All right.
And, I don't know
how
much longer Kyle Pitts is going to be an Atlanta Falcon. So it's like, go out with a bang, my guy. Getting a game-winning touchdown in a must-win playoffs, maybe you're in type of game for Kyle Pitts, maybe playing his final days in Atlanta. Maybe he's back next year. Who knows? But, just wash the bitter taste out of all of our mouths from these last 5-6 weeks for Kyle Pitts.
Would that fix it all, though? That would fix it all.
No,
for you?
It wouldn't. But at least we got
right out of the blazer. Yeah,
it's like, hey, we got this thing. This was a great Christmas gift. I don't know what it's going to be like, in Carolina the week after, but we got this one thing. So that's
cool. Cool.
I'd like to see, because I don't think we've seen it this year. We got a little bit spoiled when Cordero Patterson was here. I'd love to see a kickoff return for a touchdown or a punt return for a touchdown, because like you guys said, we may not be able to count on the defense scoring 2 touchdowns, but wouldn't it be cool if we could maybe get one from special teams? I think Marquise Williams' squad is due for one.
Yeah, for sure. If you would have asked for a Matthew Judon pick six, I mean,
Well,
that would have been crazy. That was the first time in his whole NFL career, which he was trying to debate me for a second. He was like, "No, that's not the first time." And I said, "Okay, in the NFL," because he had them in college.
Right. Yeah.
But in the NFL, this was his first pick six. And it was funny because I asked what it was like to watch the Red Sleeves head towards the end zone.
Oh, that was hilarious. Like, I saw
he goes, honestly, I was confused. Like, I didn't know what just happened. And so I just ran to the end zone and started celebrating. And I was like, wait, what happened?
Bless his heart.
That was awesome. I mean, I didn't think that was going to happen. And I remember I had looked down for a second, looked back up, and Jonathan Abraham sits with me in the press box. I looked at John and I was like, I'm sorry, was that Judon in the end zone? What? He was like, sure was.
Yeah.
I love it.
I think everybody
that was a Christmas miracle. If we're counting on Christmas miracles, there you go. There you go.
It is. Oh yeah, no question about it. Yes, he's shown up the last couple of weeks, but he showed up big Sunday. So when we come back, we'll keep that conversation going about things that we wish for, like what will we do after Dub? We talked about what we do after Christmas, and maybe what we do in the district. We'll talk about it on the other side. This episode of our Atlanta Football Party is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Well, it definitely happened to me. It happens all the time. I put something of a reminder on my calendar, and lo and behold, the reminder comes and goes, and I still am on the hook for it. A few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for. That happens too. Rocket Money helps to make it easy to track them all down because it's like having a personal assistant for your finances. So Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. And it's helped over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So again, I use it for canceling services. It might be something that you want to do as well, especially the ones that you don't use anymore, and it'll save you a ton. And with their goals feature, you can automatically set aside money for your future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. And we're all about to get into our 2025 budgets. So that's a good look to maybe have the goals feature to help you with that. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right. So keeping with our theme of what we would want to do if we had our wish, right? So today, as of today, that is, it's supposed to be 60 degrees in the district. And, of course, technically the Commanders play in Landover, Maryland, but follow me here because I love Washington, D.C. It's like my favorite city. So anyway, I always still think of them in those terms. And obviously I'd be excited to be there. It's mild weather, but the Falcons have actually had some pretty cool locales this past season. So for you, Maria, where would you want to go in terms of just looking back at the season? And I know we still have Carolina to play, but where's maybe that city where you're like, wow, that would have been a good look to be there?
I got two.
You got to go for it.
So one would be Denver because I love Denver. I love the weather there. I love the scenery. I just love all the mountains. I love being out west. Forget the game because the game obviously was trash, but I love Denver and I would just love to go there because it's so great. And then also Vegas, just because I've never been to the stadium. I've been to Vegas a ton. I love Vegas. Again, great place, great weather. No humidity, which I grew up in South Florida. So humidity is like basically a part of my DNA. But when I get away from it, I'm like, wow, this is how the other half lives. This is wonderful. So I do love Vegas. I love the desert. I think both those locations out west are great.
I like that. And yes, Denver also, at least on the outskirts, has some great skiing. And yeah, the first time I went to Vegas and someone said, hey, it's going to be 112 degrees. I was like, yeah, I won't be coming outside. But then they said there's no humidity.
It feels
so that
fine.
112, exactly. It was wonderful. So yeah, I can't really complain because like you said, I think we're all accustomed to humidity being from the South, but that dry heat was kind of a nice look. So I like those two. What about you, Aaron? And since we're still in the Christmas spirit and we're kind of giving gifts, you can pick two cities too.
Okay. Well, first I'll say I went to Vegas and it was 112 outside. It's still hot. It's just not
It's
as hot as it
hot,
is.
but you're not like sweating, you
Yes,
know?
yes.
Yeah,
You have
It
to
is not
continue to drink water because right.
oppressively hot, but it
Yeah,
is
there you go.
112 is hot. I don't know. But
And I like it
for
hot.
me, obviously from what we just talked about in this last segment, I like to eat, drink, and be merry, So Vegas and New Orleans are the two cities that you can do that a bunch at, eat, drink, and be merry. So if and I've been to both cities and I've enjoyed my time eating, drinking, and being merry in both cities. But Denver is the one city that I have not been to, and so I would like to experience. So out of the Falcons road games, that would probably be the one that I would choose just for the new experience. But in terms of just going back to your old standbys of just like where can I have the type of fun that I like to have.
Right.
Vegas and New Orleans are probably the two sort of standouts there.
Learning a lot about you today, Free. This is great.
Right? This is
I love
amazing.
this. What a great episode.
So when we wrap, I'm gonna send Free my go-to list for New Orleans, so that way when he goes again, he already knows the nooks and crannies and where to get the good food and where to get the good entertainment.
I would appreciate
I'll
that.
hook you up. Yeah,
I might be going to New Orleans ahead of the Senior Bowl this year, so that would be
perfect.
I'm going on Sunday, so send me the list. I'm going with the Bulldogs.
Well, oh, nice. Oh my God. Yeah, we were talking about that a couple days ago. That's going to be a really good trip. So yes, I will send you guys both, and you have to tell me what you give a thumbs up to and what you give a thumbs down to. But I'm going to go with what you guys said as well with my second city, and we'll make it a trifecta. Denver is just, like you said, it's beautiful. Like even getting off the flight, I can remember just, like you said, seeing the mountains and the snow caps. It was amazing. And then, once you kind of go in a little bit more to actually hit the slopes, it's a beautiful place. And I went there for work as well, which is not so beautiful. But yeah, for fun. Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, no, that was a scary trip that I'll have to tell you guys about offline, because I don't want to belabor here because we're in a happy place. But yeah, when you're having fun, when you're having fun there, it is an absolutely beautiful place. So let me ask you guys this as we wrap up, and I'll say one, but if you guys want to give a one or two, that's quite fine. But when you think about maybe that one, I'm going to go with unsung hero, Maria, because we had fun with that a couple of days ago, like our unsung heroes from this Sunday's game. You actually called one of them out because Matthew Judon was a name that we hadn't been talking about a whole heck of a lot. So we had some of those unsung heroes who ended up making plays that we said, okay, or even a Harrison, because Zach Harrison was one of those guys who had a good play. We didn't necessarily talk a lot about him Sunday, so we went to Monday. That said, give me maybe one or two of your unsung heroes that if they show up with a big play, this could mean a win for the Falcons.
He's not as unsung as, I don't know. He's unsung nationally, but maybe those of us that have been following, we understand that Caden Ellis, he's like consistently been my unsung hero. And I think now that Jimmy Lake and company are starting to figure out what he's good at, it really helps. He's rushing the passer at a consistent rate. And, we know how versatile Caden can be, but I think him honing in on what he's good at has really transformed what he can do defensively for the Falcons. So I think, Caden, it's not like he has to change anything. I think him continuing to do what we've watched him do all year. He's my unsung hero. He's been that way, I think, all year. And I think I'll continue that going into Washington.
Yeah, I absolutely like that because, he's the guy that and sometimes it gets lost in the shuffle when we talk about last year's free agency class, this year's free agency class, if you will. And it's like, oh, yeah, they got David Onyemata last year. They got Jesse Bates III. And oh, my goodness, when David was up front before, of course, he got injured, he was amazing alongside Grady Jarrett. And we know what Jesse Bates III has been able to do last season and this season. I feel like maybe Caden Ellis got a little bit lost in the shuffle there last year, but now he's showing you why they went after him as well. And for you, Free, who's maybe that unsung hero where you say, yeah, if he shows up and he shows out, there's a very good chance that this Falcons team will walk away with a W.
Yeah, going super unsung, I'm going to go with D'Angelo Malone. He's shown up a couple of times the last couple of weeks. And just because when we talk about how you contain Jayden Daniels and sort of corralling him, like you need to have guys that can run him down, and I don't know if the Falcons have those guys, but I think the guy closest to that ability, in addition to Caden Ellis, in addition to Arnold Ebiketie, and Matthew Judon, is D'Angelo Malone. That's a big reason why the Falcons took him in the third round. It hasn't lived up to expectations That was the pick the Falcons got in the Matt Ryan trade. But we've seen some flashes from D'Angelo Malone the last couple of weeks. He's gotten more opportunities in the back half of the season. And so because he has that sort of unique athleticism that can make him an effective guy, sort of chasing a guy down like Jayden Daniels in the open field, like I think there may be an opportunity for someone like a D'Angelo Malone to get, potentially one of those cleanup sacks or something like that, that is sort of, the thing that flips the script for the Falcons, is that sort of game-changing play that shuts down a drive or something in a potential back and forth game. So D'Angelo Malone's a guy that I'm curious to see, if he gets those opportunities and how he handles those.
Yeah, I like that as a call too, because he's another one where you thought, okay, he's got potential. We see flashes, but it seems like we've never kind of seen that consistency, but we're starting to see a little bit more for him. And I'm going to correct something I said earlier, but he can correct this for himself if he has a good game. And that's what Bradley Pinion. So see, when I don't have my contacts in, it's a problem because he's not second, he's 22nd in the league. But the good thing about him with averaging 47 is as long as 65. And I really do feel like if there are any opportunities to flip the field, whether that's from a special teams perspective or a defensive perspective, I think that can be great. And if I can get a kind of unsung hero with him, I think it needs to be Riley Patterson. Like Free said, just in case this happens to be a close game, we now have a kicker that, other than the first one, is a little wonky, but the second two, super solid. And he could absolutely be an unsung hero should we get a close game in DC. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Football Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Falcons with your host, Aaron Freeman, as your second listen, and check out Maria Martin, host of Sports Extra on Sundays on 11 Alive. And of course, check out JD, Free, and me on the Locked On Postcast Sunday night to debrief on Falcons Commanders.